There was the acoustic guitar as well. I didn't have one, I borrowed one at the time. That's the truth, I did.
On that first time, had you bought one by the time the second album came out?
Well, I tell a lie, I did have an acoustic.
Not the right one.
It wouldn't have recorded well. It wouldn't have recorded well. It was a brute to play, but that was good.
Yeah, because you use a B bender on it. Well, I've noticed it a lot on some of the later albums.
Yeah.
They're a great invention, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, Parsons White, yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Well, Clarence White was an excellent guitar player, really good. Of course, he played with the Byrds, as we all know.
Because that's originally a guitar built for country players, wasn't it? But you took that and took it into a rock area, which is another innovation for rock music.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yes, that's right. I don't think it had been used in... No, it hadn't, you're right. It was only used like with the country pickers, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, Ronnie Wood uses one now as well.
All he does now, after I played on One Hit to the Body, yeah.
You have to learn it for that
I think
solo.
that's probably where he discovered it. Yeah. I'm sure he'd be the first to say so.
Yeah, I think one of the interviews, he says that the worst thing about you playing on the album is you had to learn the solo for the tour.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it was a valuable tool, though, the guitar, once he got it. I'm sure he really enjoys it.
No, it's a great sound, it's a unique sound. Because actually most of the time when you toured, you played the famous Les Paul, but in the studio you used the telly. Was there any reason why you didn't
no, wait a minute. At what stage?
I'm thinking about
no,
later.
Originally I had a Les Paul, and yeah, I did. I had a Les Paul Custom, and it got nicked, got stolen actually, in America when on an early tour. But no, I started with the Telecaster on stage, and then Joe Walsh came to me and said, "Look, I've just got this guitar," and he said, "I've got another one of them myself." He said, "You've really got to have this guitar. You've really got to play it." And he was right. He was right.
The story goes that you flew him up to New York and paid him $500 for that guitar. Do you remember that?
No, it was $500, but I think it was. Oh gosh. No, I'm
going back a bit now.
I thought it was the West Coast that this all happened. Yeah, because I know I started to use it at the Fillmore, and once I started using it, that was it.
And was that a Sunburst?
Yeah, it's the same one I still play. I'm one of these rare people that plays the same guitar that he, that he liked in the first place.
Do you grow very attached to the instrument?
Every guitar is different, let me tell you. They're all different. They're all different pieces of wood, and they all feel different. They all sound different. And this is a fact. And this one is just really, really good. It's a really comfortable beast to play, and that's why I always played it.
Right, so 3 was done. You're still touring, obviously. And I mean, there's that album live on Blueberry Hill, which is around that time, isn't it?
I don't know, is it?
Yeah, it's they call the...
I can only tell you by the material. It's like you can tell what tour it is, basically. This is another one of your bootlegs. by you can tell.
It's really, I mean, Zeppelin was such a great live band. I mean, that's what comes across.
Well, this is the whole point. It's one of the most important aspects of Led Zeppelin, which I think this is almost unique to our band. I can't think of any other that comes to mind anyway. That once we'd finished in the studio and we'd done the best that we could there, and we employed the numbers into the stage act. That wasn't the end of the story. So that was just the beginning. We'd make those numbers work for us. We weren't content to just play them note for note perfect, as many people are these days, for instance, and even were then. I mean, we were constantly going for going for new areas and new insights within the improvisation. If you could, anyway. If some songs obviously had to stick to the same sort of structure. But for instance, I'll give you an example. Rain's song on Houses of the Holy, and then Rain's song on Song Remains the Same. I mean, it's just you can just tell how we've really captured the whole thing by then. We've got it perfectly.
No Quarters one that stands out for me is the live.
Yes, yeah, I think this is it. We didn't stop. We were constantly going for fresh insights. I mean, I think it's I mean, I was always trying to change all the guitar solos on things, unless it was something like, for instance, Celebration Day, which was such a tuneful one that you had to stick to. and you know, new riffs would come out each night, and that was it. That kept us musically on our toes, and that's why it was always so exciting to play.
You seem to have great communication as a band. I mean, you just glance around, look back at Bonzo, and you really seem to instinctively feel what each other were doing.
Yeah.
The real, was it must be a very strong chemistry between
Well,
them.
this is exactly what it was, you know. I mean, you can, for a start, it was 4 outstanding musicians, and that yet we had this added dimension that we had the chemistry there. It was an alchemical quality, you know. And you've seen it so many times before, and since you'll find 4 fantastic musicians, but they just don't have that spark.
No, I mean, Zeppelin were bigger than the band, really, weren't they? The
Sure.
whole thing was quite special for a lot of us, I mean, particularly for you. Now, Zeppelin 4, of course, suddenly we come across another great album, but it also had this song that's become an anthem. And when Capital Radio do their top 100, it's up there, Stairway to Heaven. And I've heard in interviews before, it almost sort of came as a sort of inspiration. The lyrics almost wrote themselves, as Robert tells. Did you have the same feeling for the musical side?
No, actually, I'd constructed this, the musical side of it. I've worked on it for quite a while, on and off. I was putting all these different sections together and putting them in what I considered was the right order before I even presented it to the band. And because it was pretty complex to especially being presented with that, having never heard it before for the other 2 guys, notably at this point, John Paul Jones and then John Bonham, because I routined it with John Paul Jones first, and then John Bonham came in afterwards. And there was a hell of a lot to remember, as you can imagine, especially with no lyrics at this point. And so we were running over it quite a number of times to get the whole feel of the song right, and the fact that it actually accelerates from the beginning to the end, which was something that had to be controlled, etc. So there's a lot of planning on this one, let me tell you. And so it gave Robert a lot of time to get familiar with it. But I must say that those lyrics just flowed out there at the rehearsal stage, you know. And I don't think that I think he only really had to come up with 1 verse or something, you know, just little, you know, dotting the I's, so to speak, within the rest of the verses and crossing the T's. But he had, you know, it was a truly inspired lyric.
There's a guitar solo as well. I saw Frank Zappa a few years ago, and he played Stairway to Heaven. They had a horn section do your solo. That was a great. How was the solo constructed? Did it take a lot of work to work that solo out?
No, I just warmed up for it and let the tape go and did 3 different solos, and chose the best one, and then overlaid the harmony up to it, which comes in the middle.
Because that song, of course, presented you with another problem when you played it live, and that brought about the double neck guitar. Is that right?
Yeah. The double neck came after the. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Here, the double neck came after the release of the album, actually. So we could do it on stage. I couldn't do it on a 12-string or a 6-string. It's curious because a lot of people think that we actually recorded it on the double neck. So set that one straight. It's become quite a trademark now.
There's another song that stands out for me on that. In fact, the whole album stands out really, but When the Levee Breaks, which is a much sampled, the drum sound that's much stolen. How did you get that enormous drum sound?
Well, I can tell you how I got there and how we got there. It starts in the days when I used to when I was doing the studio recording, and as a paid sideman, I was on sessions where you could hear the drummer doing these magnificent parts and really playing his guts out, and then you hear the playback and it sounded like he was hitting cardboard boxes. It's because they used to put drummers in drum booths, you see, and the drums wouldn't breathe. And I learned a lot from these early studio days, and that was one thing that I was determined that the drums would breathe and you get a proper drum sound. Of course, we took this further, and this with natural ambience. Well, we took this further on, you see, and actually used to position the drums in the most dynamic part of a room. And at this point, we're talking about When the Levee Breaks. We were recording at a house in the countryside, Headley Grange, and the drums were actually set up in the main hall. And there was this staircase going up like this, and 2 or 3 stories the building is, and we just had the microphone, a stereo microphone, on the second stairwell, and that was it. There wasn't any bass drum mic or anything. That was it, because John Bonham, you have to immediately realise that he had a perfect balance when he was playing, and that was it. It was just the one stereo mic, and the natural ambience of the hall.
I mean, it comes across.
The entrance hall.
I think now you could get one of your lexicons or whatever they're called.
Well, that's it.
But it wouldn't do it the same, would it? It wouldn't be the same.
No, but probably if we hadn't have tried all these things and pioneered them, then it's quite possible they wouldn't be in a little program in a lexicon box these days. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you were sort of doing things with what you had, analog equipment and space that now.
Well, the levy breaks is a classic example of that, because as each verse comes, there's a subtle difference in each one.
Yeah,
it's a good one for headphones, that one.
It's a great
At
album.
the end, you've got everything spiralling around the vocalist. Yeah, it's a good one, that. It's fun.
Because that's of course, on the box tape.
Oh.
You must have
It's
rediscovered.
extremely intense as well.
Yeah, it's a great album. Then you heavily toured that album again. You're always touring as a band. And then House of the Holy came out, and I remember waiting. There was a long delay coming out. The rumour was it was the artwork. Why did it take so long for it to come out, House of the Holy?
I don't remember now.
So I've never probably read it in Melody Maker or something.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't remember that. I know that we'd recorded a surplus at that time, and that's why Houses of the Holy actually appears on the Physical Graffiti, because don't ask me why now, but it's, anyway, there was a surplus of stuff that was left over from that.
That's quite interesting that the title track was actually on the following album.
Yeah, but that's us all over.
Yeah, I mean, that's for me was pure Zeppelin. Right?
Yeah.
But at the time, House of the Holy was another one that the critics didn't like. It's another one that now is great as well. It's got a real feel to it. Maybe because you experimented with reggae.
But but I mean, we got terrible reviews for the 4th album, and I mean that's a nonsense now, isn't it? Because that's well, it is a nonsense. But anyway, yeah, okay, you said it. We have bad reviews for that one.
But in fact, it sold. I mean, everybody went out and bought it. It never really was a problem. You must have got fed up. Did you ever stop reading these reviews and think, oh God, I don't want to read that stuff? And just
Well, it was the 4th album that we had no information whatsoever on the cover. I know we were the first band to do that, because we were so fed up with all this thing about, oh, the bands are hype, which, again, that's absolutely ridiculous. And just purely through the fact of these bad reviews, we thought, okay, let's put an album out with no information on it whatsoever. And that'll be a statement to the critics. Of course, that went right over their heads, let me tell you. But yeah, okay, carry on.
Yeah, so the record company, they must have. Did they ever try and put pressure on you to be a bit more conformist? They would say, well, can't we have a single? Did they ever do any of that?
Oh, they wanted to put Stairway out as a single, but no, there was no way.
You held on to it.
We didn't, as I said, we didn't consider ourselves to be a singles-orientated band. We was an album band. And of course, at that point in time, I mean, it wasn't just us. It was a really, I mean, think of the bands that were going at that point in time. They were making great albums as well. It was a really healthy period in music, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a magical
70s,
time. Yeah. But the 70s, there was a time, about the mid-70s, when Led Zeppelin were outselling the Rolling Stones 10-1. And you must have thought then, my God, I've created something very big here. Did you ever think this is...
No, because I wasn't really that interested in the sales figures. That's a truthful statement. I mean, it just didn't, it was nice to get the gold discs and platinum discs, but I think the most important one was the very first gold disc I ever got for the first album.
And after
I wasn't
that...
actually getting blasé, but they were actually appearing, and they just stopped piling up at the house.
Filling another corner in one of the rooms.
Basically.
Because the tour after House of the Holy was the one that was filmed, became The Song Remains the Same. Now, the story I heard about The Song Remains the Same, you'll probably say I'm wrong, but that you filmed at Madison Square Garden, and the close-ups weren't good enough, so you redid the whole thing at Shepperton Studios, and that it's not really Madison Square at all. Is that true or false?
Well, you see,